Today is Tuesday. You are standing in the cramped, windowless company break room, waiting to heat up your lunch in front of a yellowing microwave that has been missing its turning plate since 2018. The air around you is thick with whispers and the sharp scent of stale coffee. There is a rumor of a massive round of layoffs coming at the end of the month. Your boss just walked past the frosted glass door with a cold, unreadable expression, not looking at anyone. A few coworkers are huddled by the water cooler, their eyes betraying a very specific, quiet kind of panic. You know that look. They are doing the math in their heads, trying to figure out how long their emergency savings will last if they do not have a job tomorrow. For most of them, the answer is terrifyingly short, but you just stand there. You watch the red digital numbers count down on the microwave screen. 30 seconds, 29, 28. Your heart rate is completely normal. Your breathing is steady. You are not afraid. You are not recalculating your mortgage or panicking about your credit card bills. You feel nothing but an absolute profound quiet. Nobody in this room knows that. Right at this very second, you have officially crossed the finish line of financial freedom. There is no popping of champagne. There is no confetti. There is no celebration on a luxury yacht like they paint on social media. The moment you possess the most wealth in your entire life is happening on the most boring day of the week, in the most ordinary setting possible, wearing a sweater you bought on sale 5 years ago. And that is exactly how you designed it. But to buy the strange, impenetrable silence of this Tuesday, you had to pay the heavy price of a decade living as a ghost. Let us rewind exactly 10 years. You were 32 years old, in this exact same kitchen, standing next to this exact same microwave. You were sweating cold when you heard your name called into the HR office. At that time, your salary was $1,200 a month. You were a mid-level employee doing mid-level work, terrified of every performance review. But the low salary was not the worst part. The worst part was the $4,000 in high-interest credit card debt hanging over your head like an executioner's blade. It was the direct result of your impulsive 20s, a time when you tried to buy things to prove yourself to people who did not actually care about you. You bought rounds of drinks you couldn't afford. You financed a car that was slightly too expensive just to look good in the parking lot. You were playing the game of appearing successful while secretly drowning. On that morning 10 years ago, you had exactly $42 left in your checking account. $42 stood between you and complete financial collapse. Your absolute dependence on a single source of income had quietly stripped you of your right to be a free human being. Every time the boss raised his voice in a meeting, you had to lower your head and take it. Every time the company demanded unpaid overtime on a Friday evening, you had to nod, smile, and cancel your plans, because you knew perfectly well that having no financial reserves meant having no right to fight back. You were a hostage to your own lifestyle. That night, after miraculously surviving the first round of layoffs by the skin of your teeth, you drove home in silence. You sat alone in the dark of your small apartment, stared at your bank statement, and made a decision. You would never let anyone hold the power of life and death over your peace of mind ever again. But the path you chose was not to go out there and scream at the world. You did not post a motivational quote. You chose to disappear right in front of their eyes. The process of becoming invisible started with brutal, unforgiving austerity. You gritted your teeth, cut every single unnecessary expense, and worked whatever extra weekend jobs you could find to wipe out that $4,000 debt. You sold the things you didn't need. You stopped going to the bars. You stayed in on Friday nights. The day the confirmation paper arrived in the mail saying the debt was fully settled, you did not celebrate. You did not reward yourself with an expensive dinner or a new gadget, which is what most people do right before they fall back into the debt trap. Instead, you did something that would alter the entire trajectory of your life. You set up an automatic transfer every single payday at 2 in the morning. Before you could even wake up and see the money hit your checking account, 40% of your income was ruthlessly routed directly into a portfolio of broad market dividend-paying ETF index funds. You automated your escape. You forced yourself to live on the remaining 60%, treating it as if that was your true salary. The mechanism of paying yourself first was permanently activated. Your money began a secret, quiet life of its own, far away from the consumer machinery. At the office, nobody noticed the shift. You still wore the same faded jackets, You started bringing your own lunch in a plastic container instead of eating out at the overpriced bistro across the street with your coworkers. When they invited you to expensive weekend dinners or asked you to chip in for lavish office gifts, you politely declined, citing vague family obligations. You began to intentionally separate from the herd. You accepted being seen as boring, a quiet employee with nothing standing out. You completely abandoned the exhausting need to project success through brands, watches, or vacations. The armor of an ordinary life began to wrap around you. It shielded you from the prying eyes, the toxic comparisons, and the pointless office competitions. But you soon learned a painful truth. This system did not deliver the immediate gratification you thought it would. The reality of the first 3 years was brutal, isolating, and tested your psychological endurance more than any financial book ever warned you about. The first year of investing felt like throwing pennies into a bottomless well. You would log into your brokerage account and see that your aggressive saving had generated perhaps a few dollars in dividends. It was mathematically correct, but emotionally devastating. You were sacrificing your present comfort, saying no to your friends, eating cold leftovers, and the reward was a dividend check that could barely buy a decent cup of coffee. By the third year, the doubt began to creep in. You were 35. The numbers were growing, but at a glacial pace. The magic of compound interest that everyone talked about felt like a complete myth. You felt tired. You felt like you were missing out on your own life. By the time you hit year 5, you are 37 years old. Your investment account, fueled by your iron discipline and the slow grinding machinery of continuous reinvestment, has crossed $45,000. To the average person, that sounds like a substantial amount of money. But the actual cash flow it generates at this stage is a completely different story. The quarterly dividends trickling into your account break down to roughly $80 a month. You had sacrificed 5 years of luxury, 5 years of Friday night dinners, 5 years of social validation, and the reward is a passive income that can barely cover a modest grocery bill for a week. You are carrying a massive amount of capital, yet its external manifestation is painfully, almost humiliatingly small. This is the psychological desert that breaks 99% of people. It is the lonely middle. It becomes exponentially harder on the random Thursday afternoon when the coworker sitting in the cubicle right next to you, a guy who makes the exact same $1,200 salary as you, rolls into the company parking lot in a brand new, gleaming black German luxury sedan. The entire office gathers by the window to admire it. People are clapping him on the back, asking about the horsepower, admiring the smell of the premium leather interior. He beams with pride. He tells everyone about his recent promotion, his bold financial moves, and how you have to dress for the job you want. He bought the car on a grueling 72-month financing plan at a high interest rate. But nobody in the office sees the suffocating loan. They only see the leather. They only see the success. You walk back to your desk, sit down, and open your plastic container of cold homemade pasta. A deep, gnawing sense of doubt begins to invade your mind. The temptation to quit has never been stronger, because the math of temptation is incredibly simple. You have $45,000 in liquid assets. You could log into your brokerage app right now, hit sell all, and buy that exact same German luxury car in cold hard cash tomorrow morning. You would still have money left over. You could instantly buy the respect of the entire floor. You could end the quiet whispers that you were struggling financially. You could finally prove to everyone that you are not a failure. You put your hand on the computer mouse. You open the browser. You log into your investment portal. The screen glows blue, reflecting off your tired eyes. You hover the cursor over the Liquidate Portfolio button. You sit there for a full 10 minutes, watching the cursor blink. This is the ultimate stress test of your financial identity. Are you building wealth to buy freedom, or are you building wealth to buy applause? You close the browser. You choose to keep your old faded car. You choose the cold lunch. You choose the invisible, agonizingly slow progress over the highly visible debt. You swallow your pride and let the office think whatever they want to think. And that specific silent decision changes the entire architecture of your future. By year 8, you are 40 years old. The economic landscape has shifted and your salary has slowly crept up to $1,800 a month. But the real transformation is happening completely in the dark, away from human eyes. The dividend reinvestment plan you set up all those years ago, where every tiny dividend automatically bought fractional shares, which then produce their own tiny dividends, has finally hit its mathematical inflection point. The snowball is no longer being pushed, it is rolling on its own gravity. You check your statement. Your passive cash flow has quietly surged to $800 every single month. This is not yacht money. This is not private jet money. But structurally, it is a monumental shift in the balance of power. That $800 completely covers your electricity, your water, your internet, and your baseline groceries. You have essentially hired an invisible employee who works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, never takes a sick day, and never complains, whose sole purpose in life is to pay for your baseline survival. The office environment has not improved at all. The boss still shouts during the Monday morning strategy meetings. The deadlines are still artificially compressed. The corporate culture is still toxic. But one morning when the boss slams his fist on the table and threatens the entire team with poor performance reviews, you notice something entirely new. You look down at your hands. They are not shaking. You check your pulse. Your heart rate hasn't spiked. The primal animal fear of losing your job has completely evaporated from your nervous system. His anger is no longer a biological threat to your existence. It is just unpleasant background noise. If he fires you today, you will not starve. You will not lose your apartment. You have fully equipped your invisible armor. And you found it just in time, right before the biggest economic storm of the decade makes landfall. Year 10. You are 42. A severe macroeconomic downturn strikes the market. Credit freezes. The company loses its biggest enterprise client in a catastrophic contract negotiation. The rumor mill turns into reality. A massive wave of layoffs sweeps through the floor, turning the once arrogant office into a zone of absolute unadulterated panic. Remember that coworker with the shiny black German sedan? Today his face is completely pale, the color of ash. You watch him hurriedly step into the emergency stairwell to take a panicked phone call from his bank. The heavy debt he used to purchase his social status is now slowly suffocating him. He has a $900 monthly car payment, a massive mortgage, and zero liquid savings because every dollar he earned went toward maintaining the illusion of wealth. He is completely trapped. He is a hostage to his own performance. Later that afternoon, the boss calls an emergency all-hands meeting. He paces the room, his voice dripping with subtle malice, hinting that anyone who refuses to accept a temporary 20% pay cut and work unpaid overtime this entire weekend will be put on the immediate termination list. The room is paralyzed with fear. People look down at their desks, silently nodding, frantically calculating how much they need this diminished paycheck just to survive another month. The coworker with the luxury car is the first to nod, his eyes wide with terror. Which brings us exactly back to today, Tuesday. You are standing in front of the yellowing microwave in the break room, watching the red digital numbers count down to 0. 30 seconds. 29. 28. Your phone buzzes in your pocket. It is the automated quarterly cash flow report from your brokerage account. You slide the phone out, you open the email. You read the summary line twice, slowly, the way you read something when you want to make sure the math is real. Your average passive income has officially hit $1,600 a month. Your essential living costs are exactly $1,500 a month. The crossover point has been breached. You are completely, undeniably, financially independent. There are no fireworks in the break room. There is no dramatic movie scene where you flip a desk, scream at your boss, and storm out of the building. There is no confetti falling from the fluorescent lights. The number exists only on a screen held in the hand of a person wearing a 5-year-old sweater, waiting for a plastic box of leftovers to get warm. The microwave lets out a sharp ding. You smile softly, an entirely private smile. You take your warm lunchbox and walk slowly back to your desk. Just as you sit down, the boss marches over. He drops a heavy stack of files onto your keyboard, deliberately messing up your workspace. He looks down at you, expecting the same subservience he has extracted from everyone else. He demands that you cancel your weekend plans to stay in the office and process the files for free. He implies heavily that your job depends on it. The 32-year-old version of you, the one with $42 in the bank, would have stammered an apology and immediately started working. The current you simply looks up. You look at the files. You look at his face. You do not raise your voice. You do not show any anger. You slide the stack of files back across the desk right to the edge, and you politely, firmly, and calmly say, "No, I won't be able to do that this weekend." The boss freezes. His mouth opens slightly. He is completely unequipped to handle someone who is not afraid of him. He doesn't understand what he is looking at. He sees a mid-level employee in an old sweater, but he feels the immovable weight of a person who no longer needs his money. The ultimate power of wealth is not about buying expensive things to prove your worth to strangers in a parking lot. It is not about champagne, or yachts, or screaming your success from the rooftops. The true architecture of wealth is about buying the right to control your own time. It is about protecting your inner peace. It is about having the structural capacity to look someone in the eye and comfortably say no in the middle of a chaotic, terrified world. It is the supreme, untouchable privilege of being perfectly fine, completely invisible, and absolutely free on a boring Tuesday morning.